Welcome to this explainer. If you've ever lost points on an academic essay for a clunky run-on sentence, or maybe you just feel like your writing is missing that final professional polish, well, you're absolutely in the right place today. We're going to elevate your English by unpacking what is literally the secret weapon of sophisticated C2 level academic writing. I'm talking about the non-defining adjective clause. If you've ever read a high-level paper and just wondered, how do they weave so much rich, complex information into a single sentence without making it a complete mess? Well, this is exactly how they do it.
Let's take a super quick look at our roadmap. We'll be walking through the anatomy of extra information, the rules and relative pronouns, defining versus non-defining clauses, some really advanced academic usage, and finally, how to avoid those pesky common errors. All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the anatomy of extra information. So what exactly are we talking about here? Basically, a non-defining adjective clause, which, by the way, you might sometimes hear called a non-restrictive relative clause, is a subordinate clause that gives us additional non-essential information about a noun. The absolute key takeaway here is that this clause is supplementary. It's an extra. It brings wonderful color and precision to your writing, but it isn't strictly necessary to actually identify the noun itself. Think of it as a nice little bonus fact just neatly packaged right there inside your sentence. Now, to truly master how this works, there are exactly 3 essential characteristics you've got to memorize. Consider these your non-negotiable checklist. First up, it must be extra information. Second, commas are strictly required, no exceptions. And third, the core sentence must remain completely intact. Actually, my favorite trick for this is what we call the remove it test. If you were to physically lift that clause right out from between the commas, the core sentence you're left with still has to make perfect grammatical sense. If it feels broken, well, you've made a mistake. Okay, moving right along to Section 2, the rules and relative pronouns. I want you to treat this exactly like a mathematical formula. You start with your noun, hit a comma, drop in your relative pronoun, add the rest of your clause, and boom, close it with another comma. Those commas, they're like absolute non-negotiable structural pillars that frame your pronoun. And your tools for this are pretty specific. You've got who for people, whom for people as objects, whose for possession, and which for things, places, or ideas. But hey, notice what's missing from that list? This brings us to an unbreakable rule for C2 mastery. The word that is completely 100% forbidden in a non-defining clause. You simply cannot use it. If you've got commas framing some extra info, that gets left at the door. No way around it. Which brings us nicely to Section 3, defining versus non-defining clauses. When we put these side by side, the difference is super clear. Defining clauses give us essential, must-have info, they don't use commas, and they will gladly accept the pronoun that. On the flip side, non-defining clauses, they just give extra info, absolutely demand commas, and totally reject the word that. It really proves that commas aren't just little breathing pauses when you read, right? They literally change the grammatical reality of your sentence. Let's actually see this in action. Take a look at the sharp contrast in meaning here. Students who submit on time receive feedback first. Now that uses a defining clause to pinpoint a very specific subgroup of students. Only the on-time ones get the feedback. But look at the second one. My students, who always submit on time, receive feedback first. This adds a really proud, completely non-essential detail about a group we already know. It implies all my students get feedback first, and oh, by the way, they also happen to always submit on time. Same basic words, vastly different implications, all driven by those 2 little commas. All right, let's step it up a notch with Section 4, Advanced Academic Usage. By injecting a clause directly after the subject. Take this example. Climate change, which remains one of the most pressing global challenges, requires international cooperation. You are adding immense sophistication to your professional arguments. It lets you layer in context and background smoothly without writing those choppy, overly simple sentences. Kind of sounds highly authoritative, doesn't it? And look, at the absolute highest level of proficiency, you can use the pronoun which, not just to point back to a single noun, but to reflect on the entire preceding idea. Check this out. The company exceeded its targets, which impressed investors. Ask yourself, what impressed them? It wasn't just the targets themselves, it was the whole fact that the company actually exceeded them. That is a seriously powerful tool for academic synthesis. Okay, finally, Section 5. Let's talk about avoiding common errors. Without those crucial structural pillars, the commas, a sentence completely collapses.
kind of like a poorly built tower. Because the Eiffel Tower is already a totally unique identified thing, it physically cannot take a defining clause. It desperately needs those commas to signal that the phrase, which is located in Paris, is just a fun bonus fact. And here's the second major trap people fall into. Remember that unbreakable rule we talked about earlier? You cannot use that with commas. You've got to swap out that clunky that for the much more elegant who. So, my brother, who lives in Canada, is genuinely the only correct way to express this at a C2 level. Let's make this explainer a bit interactive, shall we? Take a quick second and mentally highlight the extra information in this sentence. London, which is the capital of the United Kingdom, attracts millions of visitors. Go ahead, where's the non-defining clause? Did you find it? If you spotted the clause safely tucked between the commas, starting with which, comma, which is the capital of the United Kingdom, then your remove it test worked flawlessly. If you pull it out, the main sentence, London attracts millions of visitors, stands perfectly strong all on its own. All right, here is your next challenge, and it's a classic academic writing exercise. I want you to stitch these two simple, honestly somewhat basic ideas together into a single, sophisticated academic sentence using the tools we just covered. The Nile River is the longest river in Africa. It flows through several countries. Check out how beautifully this flows. The Nile River, which flows through several countries, is the longest river in Africa. See what happened there? You just elevated simple, disjointed facts into highly cohesive C2 level writing. It is literally night and day compared to writing two separate sentences. So the next time you're writing an essay or even just a professional email, try following these 4 exact steps to deliberately engineer these structures into your work. Start with your subject, slot in a related bonus fact with the right pronoun, cage it in commas, and then finish your thought. If you practice this intentionally, I promise it'll become second nature in no time. Let's quickly lock in today's key takeaways. Non-defining clauses are for extra info only. Commas are utterly mandatory. You've got to use specific relative pronouns like who, whom, whose, or which. Absolutely no that is allowed. And doing this correctly instantly adds real C2 academic sophistication to your writing. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge. Don't just understand the grammar. Actually apply it. How will you use non-defining clauses to enrich your own communication and make your next argument undeniably sophisticated? Take these tools, test them out today, and watch your English mastery hit that next level. Thanks so much for learning with me, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.